All right, welcome back, Canaries. Today's episode is probably going to hit home with a lot of you. I know we've all experienced variations of it. And I think a good way to start this conversation is to ask, have you ever been in a situation where someone told you the truth, but you felt like something was off? Like technically they didn't lie, but you're still sitting there feeling like you're missing a chapter, like pages are removed from this story. Like I was given the Spark Notes version of this relationship, and I didn't agree to that. I think a lot of us were taught to value honesty, but no one really explained the difference between honesty and transparency. I know that I didn't really delve into the definition until like in these recent years. And apparently some people are playing this kind of like a loophole game because the two things are not the same. Honesty is answering truthfully when you're asked a direct question, and transparency is offering information to someone that they need to know, even if they didn't know to ask. Do you hear the difference? Honesty is like when you're in the middle of that conflict and they're like, well, you didn't ask me that. Transparency is like, hey, you shouldn't have to ask me that. I care about you enough to want to give you all of the pieces to this puzzle. And the difference is it just matters so much more than we think, especially in dating or in friendships. I remember I dated someone who told me pretty early on that he liked to keep his life really private. And at first I really respected it. I was like, okay, I kind of like that. I don't need to be plastered all over social media to feel valued. And I made sure that I didn't place him on mine either out of respect. But as time went on, I started to feel like privacy was more like, what's that Maisie Peters song? That lyric, she says, you kept me as your favorite secret. And I thought we just took it slow. I know. Don't look at me like that. Obviously, I had big fat blinders on. It started to feel like I was in a group project and I was the only one doing the work. And that there were also more members of the group project than I was aware of, if you catch my drift. You know, those two things are not the same. Privacy is having boundaries, and secrecy is withholding information that affects the other person or affects their ability to make a decision. And I remember feeling really confused because technically he hadn't lied, but I also didn't feel fully informed. And that's such a weird place to be because you can't point to one big issue, but your brain is like, something is glitching here. And at first I thought maybe our ideas of loyalty are just different. And I thought maybe they're not, because if I had given him a dose of his own medicine in some of those situations, he would have lost his mind. We weren't playing by the same rules. And I didn't realize that at first because I didn't have the full picture. I didn't get the whole book. And if I'm being honest, I really would have made different decisions a lot sooner if I had more clarity, which is obviously probably his reason for withholding detail. And this wasn't because I was in need of control, though in some margins we all, I'm working on that. We all do. But it was mostly because I deserved to understand what I was actually participating in. And that's the part people don't bring up enough. When information is withheld, you're making decisions without full context. And that affects your ability to consent to the relationship you're in. It's like rubbing that magic genie bottle and making a wish and then realizing the wish had all these consequences you didn't consider because you didn't get the full context of it. It's not fair to be interacting with someone when you're playing by two different sets of rules and only one knows it. Clarity feels regulating. Even when it's uncomfortable, at least you know where you stand. Confusion will have you acting way out of character. And it's like, our generation loves it. We're rereading text like it's a crime documentary. We're calling our friends like, okay, wait, listen to this one part again. And the whole time they're just organizing a story to fit their narrative. And I don't even think this always comes from a bad place. Some people genuinely think they didn't lie, so they just did their job. Like they don't have the definition of honesty and transparency and embedded in them yet. But respectfully, we're going to need a little bit more than that. In dating, this looks like being upfront with intentions, emotional availability, what you're actually looking for. Not 6 weeks in like, oh yeah, I'm actually not looking for anything serious, or worse, pretending it was something serious when there was zero clarity anywhere outside of a bedroom format. So that would have been helpful before I was totally emotionally invested. In friendships, it looks like honesty with context, not just saying something when it comes up, but being willing to share those things that impact the dynamic. If clarity is something that you value, then your behavior has to reflect that. They have to align, because we can't say we value honesty, but then operate in a way that creates confusion for other people. Honesty answers questions. Transparency prevents confusion. Say that again. Honesty answers questions and transparency prevents confusion. You didn't lie, but you didn't tell the whole story either. If someone has to guess where they stand with you, that's already information. And I want to take this one step deeper because clarity doesn't just make things feel better in the moment, it actually builds that trust over time. There's something that my therapist has said to me over and over again and kind of embedded in my head. She says, trust is built over time and consistency. Not big moments, not grand gestures, consistency. And we'll do an episode on things like love bombing later, but that's why those really intense, fast starts, they don't usually build real trust. It creates a false sense of intimacy because trust isn't built in a weekend or a date or 3 dates even. It's built in patterns. And I remember hearing something in an interview with Jordan Peterson that stuck with me. And he was talking about how people are really complex characters, right? Like we all have these things, these skeletons, these dark spaces that these traits we've utilized to survive. We all have these really messy parts, the contradictions, the blind spots, very much like Carl Jung. So because of that, I need to be able to trust you at your word, at your service level word. And when we're getting to know someone, we're kind of collecting data. That's what I like to call it, collecting data. Like consciously or unconsciously, we're paying attention to them. How do they show up? Do their actions match their words? Are they consistent? Because every time someone tells the truth and their behavior lines up with that truth, it builds something. And every time it doesn't, it severs something. And when I can't trust you at your word, that's when we start investigating. And not in a cute way. Like suddenly I'm rereading messages, noticing tone changing, connecting dots that may or may not exist. I'm seeing who likes what photos and reaching out to people that I probably shouldn't. And now I'm not in a relationship anymore. I'm in a research project. A healthy relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship or even in parenting, can only exist if I can trust you at your word. Because if I can't trust your words early on, it's not just a small issue. It's something that will grow. And that turns into misunderstandings, resentment, disconnection. And this is how I've started to visualize trust. I picture it like it's this invisible string between people. Every time someone shows up for you, every time their words match their actions, every time there's honesty, clarity, and consistency, it's like another strand gets tied. And over time, those strands get stronger and stronger, more durable. But the opposite is true too. So every time there's confusion or a lack of clarity or something feels like off, somebody wasn't honest, it's like those same strands get cut. And sometimes it's not even one big thing. It's a bunch of little moments, like little cuts. Little inconsistencies. And you look up one day and you're like, why do I feel so disconnected from this person? Because our relationships are either made up of tied strings, cut strings, or strings that were never built in the first place. And this is where I've had to check myself too, because it's not just about what other people do, it's about how I show up. I really like the idea of karma. I always reference the ×3 rule. The ×3 rule says that every action you take will come back to you ×3. And whether you believe in that or not, it's essentially just a karma rule. It's a good pause point. So if this moment, this action that I'm about to take came back to me ×3, would I be happy about that? If I withhold this, if I stay unclear, if I don't say the thing that probably needs to be said out loud, would I feel respected if it came back to me in like a mirrored way? Because every choice we make, we're either tying a string or cutting one, or not connecting at all. I think it's easy to expect trust from other people, but it's harder to ask, am I actually building that too? Because trust isn't just something we hope for. It's like that community member concept I keep saying. In order to be part of a community, I have to be a community member first. It's like that. Something we actively create or slowly undo together with whoever we're engaging with. And before we move on, something I really want to mention is trust doesn't mean that there's no conflict. It doesn't mean everything is perfectly resolved either. There's research from the Gottman Institute that says that around 60 to 70% of conflict in relationship is it's ongoing. It's unresolvable, meaning it doesn't just disappear. And I remember when my therapist first told me that stat, I literally looked at her like, I think it was 69%. 69%. I looked at her like, what? And she kind of laughed at me. And my immediate response was, well, what's the percentage if I stay single forever? What percentage of conflict will I have to endure then? And she kind of looked at me like, it's not really how that works, right? And so I had a realization that kind of stuck with me that like trying to remove conflict entirely usually comes at the expense of connection. Because if you never have any friction, if nothing ever gets challenged, if everything stays perfectly smooth all the time, you're probably not actually connecting that deeply. And then to kind of ease my heart a little bit, I'm sure, she said, the cool thing about this is that you get to choose your conflict that you're in. And that changed the way that I looked at relationships a lot, because every relationship is going to have friction due to the fact that we are human. You're always going to find things about someone that aren't your favorite. So the question isn't really, is there any conflict? The question is, what kind of conflict am I choosing? Like, am I choosing the kind of conflict where they snore and that drives me crazy? Or why do they always throw their clothes next to the laundry basket and not in it? Those are manageable conflicts, mild inconveniences, versus a conflict that feels unsafe and unpredictable, or like you're constantly walking on eggshells. Like someone who says they'll be home at 10, and you're like, okay, which version of 10 o'clock are you talking about this time? And now the problem here is you're not even dealing with the issue. You're just waiting to see what kind of night it's going to be. Like, choose your conflict. And that's where trust comes in too, because trust doesn't eliminate conflict. It determines how conflict feels. Do I feel safe working through this with you? Or do I feel like I'm bracing myself for it? I don't think you can judge a relationship by how good it feels when everything is easy. I think you learn the most about a relationship by how it handles conflict. Because if everything is perfect, but the second conflict, it explodes. That tells you more than all the good moments combined. And we'll go deeper into this into a different episode because there is a lot here when it comes to conflict. But for now, just note that trust doesn't mean perfection. It means we move through the impact and the imperfect moments without destroying each other. And this is where it all kind of starts to connect for me. When trust is built, when clarity is consistent, something really important happens. And it sounds simple, but you relax. You stop scanning, you stop trying to figure things out, you stop bracing yourself for impact, and that's where play lives. And play doesn't exist in confusion, not really. Not in a sober level, I guess. It exists in safety, and you see this everywhere, in healthy relationships, in strong relationships, in parenting. When people feel safe, they joke more, they're more creative, they're silly, they're themselves, and you can't fully play in a space where you're still trying to figure out if you're safe. So when we talk about clarity and honesty and transparency, we're not just talking about communication. We're talking about the foundation that everything else is built on. And we'll go deeper into that in a different episode too, because play, real play, is safe and connected. And it's actually one of the biggest indicators of a healthy relationship. And again, that involves a friendship bracket and parenting bracket. But you don't get there without trust first. And before we close, I kind of want to tie all this together because we talked about honesty and transparency and clarity and trust, but this doesn't just live in other people. It lives in us too. Because yes, we want people who are clear, we want people who are honest, we want people whose words we can trust, but we also have to be willing to meet that standard for ourselves. And that means telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable, to be clear, even when it would be easier to not be, to hide behind, well, I didn't think they'd ask. And to be honest with ourselves too. And to take that a step further too, and when there is a moment where you weren't clear, because we are learning, that you step up and say, hey, I did you dirty there and I'm sorry. Because we can feel when something's off. We notice inconsistency, we see gaps, and then we talk ourselves out of it. We fill in the blanks, we give people the benefit of the doubt, way too many times, and we rewrite a story that just feels better, easier to sit with and exist with. That's one of the hardest parts about being lied to too, is realizing like, oh, I can't even trust myself to notice when someone's lying to me. But your gut's not trying to sabotage you, it's trying to inform you. And trusting your gut doesn't mean jumping to conclusion, it just means don't ignore the data that your body's trying to give you. Because at the end of the day, clarity does create safety. Truth builds trust, and consistency is what keeps it there. And if you don't have those things, you're going to feel it. So instead of asking yourself, am I too much? Maybe the better question is, am I asking for clarity, or am I asking for someone to finally match what they've been saying this entire time. And also to look at yourself and say, am I showing up in a way that someone else can trust too? Because this goes both ways. We're all out here just collecting data on each other, but we're also contributing to it. I have a very close friend of mine who will actually be a guest at some point on an episode, and she has a mouth like a whip on her. Like, she will tell you the truth immediately, directly, no warm up. I wish I had an example in my head right now because she is from the trades like I am. And so the sense of humor is like that. And I'm not saying honesty should ever be weaponized, right? That's not what I'm luring to. But one of my favorite things about my friendship with her is that I never question her truth because she's bold. She's bold enough to wear it. And when mistakes happen, right? Because our realities can be skewed from certain perspectives and stuff. When mistakes happen, because they will, I can look at her and be like, what the fuck was that? And she'll pause and go, huh? What the fuck is your problem? And we'll go back and forth, and she owns it and I own it. And immediately there's no deflecting. There's no twisting a story to make me feel crazy for bringing it up. There's no like degrading each other. And it makes our conflicts so easy. They last like 30 seconds because we duke it out. We tell each other the truth. We say our truth out loud. We say what happened. We validate each other's experience, and then we do better next time. It's the smoothest conflicts I've probably ever had in my entire life. And it's because we're both obnoxious enough to say how we feel in the moment. And I know this is going to sound cheesy, but the truth really is a kind of freedom in that way because we can navigate each other a lot faster. I don't have to investigate. I don't have to decode. I don't have to wonder what's real and what's not. And that's what healthy connection feels like. So be someone whose words match their actions. Be someone who makes things clearer, not confusing. And be someone who ties strings, not slowly cuts them. I'm still practicing that part. And if nothing else, let this be your reminder. You don't need to solve a mystery to feel secure in a relationship. If it feels like a puzzle you have to keep figuring out, that's your answer. And listen, if you ever find yourself rereading texts for the 14th time, zooming in on punctuation, analyzing timestamps like you're in the fucking FBI, just know it's probably not your person. Clarity is kind, confusion is neutral, and the right connections in your life, the healthy ones, aren't going to have you guessing. And for the ones who are listening closely, you might start to notice who helped you build this space in the first place. And just a side note before we close out, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or any kind of valid career space for giving advice. I'm just a girl that found a microphone. And thanks for listening, Canaries. Till next time.